Okay, great. I think we're on now.
Yeah.
So, today, thanks, Katie, for coming and chatting with me. So, for people that don't know Katie, I know Katie. You might not know who she is. Katie is a friend of mine, and I think let me start with her credentials. So, Katie is a registered clinical counselor and a registered social worker. And then she also has a master's in social work. So I was just telling her that for me, I thought I'm interested in talking about how I ended up in therapy, but then I figured, you know what, I'm actually not qualified to tell people. Apart from sharing my experience, I'm not qualified to tell other people um, what to do or what not to do. So I thought it would be awesome to come and chat with her because she was one of the people that were very instrumental in in helping me take that first step. Was it over a year ago, Katie, when I
Maybe,
asked you?
yeah.
Yeah, when I asked you for a recommendation
Yeah.
because I started therapy in
Mhm.
November last year, November of 2019. No, 2020.
Uh,
Was
yeah. Wait, no, I think it used to must have started before that. I
wa-
think.
was it? It was November because I had the car
Oh,
accident in October 20.
2019?
Oh, it was last year, was it? It was last year, whatever last year was. It was
Yeah.
2020. So it was October, the end of October. And then I remember in November we're chatting. And then I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
need, yeah, I don't know. Was it 2018 or 20? Okay, that doesn't matter right
Yeah.
now. So Katie, and
Yeah.
I we're just gonna chat, and then you can tell me. I'll ask you some questions, and I think a good place to start is always to get you to introduce yourself, right?
Mhm.
In case somebody's watching, who you are, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Not too much, just like 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, yeah, I'm Katie, and, I work as a counselor in Abbotsford, British Columbia.
Mhm,
Um, and I guess, yeah, I'm married, I have 2 little young children,
mhm.
and I like, chocolate. Ice cream or
Ice cream.
chocolate in general,
Yeah,
all
that's
the
great.
chocolate.
That's great. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
I think I love vanilla or something like salted caramel or
Oh, yes, the salted
butter
caramel is
pecan
also
or like
very
that.
good.
Yeah, that kind of stuff where it's like
Yeah.
salty and sweet.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we also have like a common ground, you and I, because I'm originally from Botswana,
Mhm.
and you actually spent a part of your childhood in Botswana, right? You were not
Yeah.
born out there, but you spent a
Yeah.
portion of it out there.
Yeah. So I lived there from when I was 4 till I was 16.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
yeah,
we have
good
that.
chunk
I
of
mean,
time.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
not in the same city or anything, but it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was, um, I don't think we never met, like our lives never,
Yeah.
our paths never crossed over there.
Yeah.
But
Well, when my husband Nick and I came
oh yeah,
to visit,
apart from,
then I
yeah,
met you,
then we
but
met.
not when I was younger. Yeah.
No, 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 not then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the main thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, for me, I remember even before I spoke to you, even before I had the car accident, I had been wanting to go and to talk to somebody, to see somebody. Because I was like, I don't know. It was before I was diagnosed. For people that don't know, before I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression,
Mhm.
it was before then. And I was just like, I don't know what's wrong, but I feel like maybe I should go try a therapist because I had tried, changing my diet, doing some mindset work, if I can put
Mhm.
it that way. I was
Mhm.
praying, but I'm like, something is wrong, but I don't know what it is. So I was like, maybe I should try counseling. I mean, for me,
Mm.
I like trying new things anyway. So I was like,
Yeah.
maybe there's something else I could, explore. And, but then I had put it off for so long because I didn't know exactly
Mhm.
who should I go see. And then the second thing is I didn't know anything about it at all, right? Until
Mhm.
I spoke to you after the accident. And yeah, so let's talk about that. So if you were gonna meet somebody, say in an elevator, and they had you didn't know them, but then somehow I don't know, it came up in that ride, the short elevator ride, that they needed to see a counselor or a therapist, what would you say to them?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I would say I think often people will wait until things are really bad
Yeah,
to
it's
go to
true.
therapy.
Yeah, it's true. I know it.
And so I think sometimes people think like, oh, like it's not as bad as what other people are going
Mm-hmm.
through, and so
Mm-hmm.
like I don't need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think maybe just even encouraging them that yeah, people come go to therapy for like a really wide range of things, and that often it's better to go like preemptively before it gets to
Mm-hmm.
the point where you're at
Yeah.
um,
You're in
breakdown.
crisis. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think that can kind of sometimes be a little bit of a barrier
Yeah.
around that. So maybe kind of starting with that to
Mm-hmm.
maybe um, make it seem a little bit less like it doesn't have to be like so intense.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would probably be at least one part of it.
Okay.
We had like a short amount of time.
Yeah, if you had a short amount of time.
And then
Okay.
also that I
Mhm.
guess like that yeah, that there's I mean, I think a lot of different therapists with different approaches,
Yeah.
different specialties. And so really yeah, kind of exploring that piece as well and
Yeah.
finding
So,
the right
yeah,
fit.
maybe let's talk about that. You're talking
Mhm.
about different, there's different therapies. So, what are some of the common ones, right? And I don't know if
Mhm.
it's important before we go into that to make a distinction between therapy and counseling. Are they different at all, or
Mm.
if there's anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily see it as being that different. Like I would personally like refer to myself like both as like a therapist and a
Okay.
counselor.
Okay.
Some people might, there could be other people who see a distinction.
Yeah.
And there are different terms, like, there might be like a psychologist
Hmm.
is a bit different in terms of schooling than like a counselor.
Okay.
So sometimes like the names of the actual like titles can be
Yeah.
different based on
Okay.
your education
Hmm.
and registrations as
Hmm.
well. But I don't necessarily see like a huge distinction between like therapy and counseling, but other people might disagree, and I'm open to that as well.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
totally. Okay. No, that's
yeah,
good for clearing that
yeah.
clearing that up. So, what are some we talked about that there could be different
Hmm.
approaches.
Yeah,
And yeah. So, what are
yeah,
some of them that are out there?
yeah. So, there are many different approaches to counseling.
Okay. Maybe
So
I should
one, no,
ask a
and
better
I can,
question.
no,
Yeah.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, I can totally go with it.
Yeah.
But I guess like some distinctions I would see is like where sometimes there's more like talk therapy.
Yeah.
And so there's yeah, many different like theories and approaches to counseling within that, but then we also have more like body-based therapies or like
Mhm.
somatic,
Yeah.
which I would see as a little bit different in the
Hmm.
approach, where it is really focused on like what's coming up for you, what's happening inside, kind of dropping down, like not as much like in the head, so
Hmm.
really more connected in that way. So
Okay.
and so that's part of it too, is like when someone is coming into therapy, they might see one therapist and be like, oh, that didn't really like fit for me, or it
Therapy
didn't
didn't
really work
work.
for me.
Yeah.
um, and it might just be like the approach that was being
Hmm.
used that
Okay.
wasn't working,
Okay.
because there's so many different trainings. Like, I mean, I did my education, but then you have like so much training on top of that that
Yeah.
you're continuing to do
Yeah.
in specific modalities
Hmm.
of therapy. And so um, yeah, so there are like, tons of different terms, whether that's like all the acronyms like CBT
Yeah.
and
Okay.
IFS
EMDR.
and DBT and
Yeah.
EMDR
Yeah.
and like ADP and
Okay.
EFT,
Oh,
all the
I
acronyms.
see. I
Yeah,
didn't even know that there were so many. In
there
my
are
head,
so
I thought it
many.
was just okay. I've heard of
Yeah,
EMDR because everybody seems to like it, and then there's
yeah.
what is it called when people tap? That's not that.
Um,
There's some.
oh, there
I thought
is there is like EFT. That's like
EFT.
one.
Yeah.
So there's like that EFT, but then there's like a different EFT.
I know. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's
like
like
with
so
therapy.
many. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Would then, because I was it you that advised me to go find a trauma informed therapist?
Yeah.
Because I had just gone through a traumatic thing, right? So
Mhm.
would that be a part of the somatic?
So yeah, often when you've experienced trauma, because so much of it is stored in your body,
Yeah.
it can be really. I will, yeah, usually recommend someone who is more somatically based or has training in that area. And there are a lot of different
Yeah.
modalities like within that.
Yeah.
But yeah, finding someone who maybe like works from that approach, so it's a bit
Mhm.
more of like a ground up way
Yeah.
of doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so often I will
Okay, so in
do
what
that.
instances then would you recommend where it's just talk therapy, like the other one where it's not somatic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be useful anyway, but
Yeah.
maybe sometimes for just like anxiety or depression, like that can be helpful as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes people do a bit of a mix. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I do a bit of a mix of where like sometimes it is a bit more like talk, and then sometimes it is really focused. Really, it's can be quite integrated.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's good research for both.
Yeah.
But particularly around like the trauma piece, I'll often
Oh, okay.
really like specify around like something more somatically based.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, a lot of the other approaches can also be pretty
Okay. No,
helpful as
I
well
know.
in general.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know that trauma is a big word right now. Like everybody
Mhm,
is talking about trauma and
mhm.
especially coming from 2020 where
Yeah.
everybody, like we all experienced a degree of trauma from
Mhm.
I mean it's still going on. So would you say then, according to you, do you think that 2020 sort of changed or kind of fast forwarded the way that you practice therapy, not just you but like the
Mhm.
field in general kind of shifted a bit?
Yeah, I would say like there's a few different ways. Like one would be like COVID
Yeah.
and like so much switching to online, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is really different
Yeah.
than it was before,
Mm-hmm.
where people have had to kind of adapt to that. And I like personally do both, like online and in person.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, where it's a lot more available and people just having to really make the switch
Yeah.
without even having the option often. And then I think also, um, yeah, just seeing where, like, particularly, I think, like in the summer with like Black Lives Matter and really a lot more coming to light around like just really how deeply embedded like white supremacy is like within
Yeah.
our culture. It's really, I think, realizing like collective trauma, both of like COVID and then
Mm-hmm.
also of more around race.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think like that has really come up. And then even like within those therapies or within those models, because a lot of these models are developed by white men, right? And so
True.
there's a
Yeah.
lot more
Yeah.
conversation
Mm-hmm.
within, I think, like the therapy field
Mm-hmm.
around just like what does that look like and what's missing,
Yeah.
and more conversation around that. And so that's coming up a lot as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like how, because often it's like these are like trauma models, but how are we like looking kind of on more like that collective piece
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Oh, okay.
And so really I
Mhm.
think there's just, yeah, lots more conversation around that in general.
Okay.
And then because it often is very individualistic, it's like, okay, how do we make it bigger than that, right? Where we're not
Yeah.
just looking at like individual, like
Yeah. Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this is like society, right?
Yeah.
And so more integration of like what does that look like? Because we're impacted. We're not like living in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
impacted by our environment.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, like my experience is different than my husband's because I'm a woman, he's a man. My experience is different than yours because you're a Black woman and I'm a white woman. We can't just act like it's all the same.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I think there's more of those conversations happening like in the
Mhm.
therapy context too. And that's all also like very within trauma, right?
Yeah.
So I think it has brought up a lot of questioning and wondering and
Which is good, right? Like
which is
curiosity is good,
yeah,
right? It's allowed,
kinda
it's
like
good. It's
yeah,
what allows us to, to keep moving forward and, making
yeah,
changes as we need to be
yeah,
making changes. And that's
yeah,
totally okay. People were allowed to change our minds about things that we used to
exactly.
think were
Yeah,
right, but,
yeah. So
shifting a bit in that way. Yeah.
totally, yeah, I think lots of like growing and
Yeah.
questioning and
Yeah.
just being curious and
Hmm.
hopefully shifting things for the better.
Yeah, totally. So going from there, like what you said, I'm particularly interested in the, should we call it racial justice, people of
Mhm,
I don't know, I've never said the word in like out loud. I usually
mhm,
write it down, BIPOC,
mhm.
BIPOC. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah, I don't know how you pronounce
yeah,
it. I'm like,
yeah,
okay. I've just
yeah,
been writing it down.
yeah.
So for people of color, Black, Indigenous, every like people of color, all of it, like covering all of it,
Mhm,
say they are looking to and I know, like for me, I live in a predominantly white in a white
mhm,
predominantly white city, or at least it looks that way, right? So
mhm,
how would somebody maybe that exists in such um in populations like that, if they are trying to go to therapy, what are some
mhm,
good questions that they can ask whoever they're going to see,
mhm,
in order to find somebody that they can be safe with, somebody that understands trauma, even
mhm,
though they might have never experienced it, but they're
mhm,
able to look or give to help out, like give therapy from from that perspective, if that makes sense.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, particularly for, like, yeah, I guess like the BIPOC community,
Yeah.
um, maybe that would be, I mean, I think in general, like when you're asking someone
Yeah.
anyway, it might be like around just kind of like approach and if they have, um, like experience in kind of like what you're coming with.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, if you, I mean, you might look specifically for, like, you might want a counselor who looks
Hmm.
like you,
Yeah.
right? That might be one thing.
Hmm.
If it doesn't matter, then maybe you're talking to them in general, um, and asking maybe their experience with like your community and like what's going on with you, what kind of approaches that they're using. Um, just kind of, I think also like looking at maybe like their like website or bio
Okay.
and like are they maybe like talking about like some of these things
Yeah. Right.
that are like important, like yeah, is it going to be
Yeah.
erased, right? Like you want to make
Hmm.
sure that
Hmm.
it is something that you're able to talk about in therapy and that
Yeah.
they're also like going to be comfortable talking about like your identity and like how you're impacted in terms of like yeah, trauma and like oppression and all these pieces.
Yeah.
And so yeah, checking out like their bio and then like asking them specifically about that.
Yeah.
Um, also maybe like asking around like within your own
Hmm.
communities of like who is safe and who
Yeah.
isn't safe, like
Yeah.
because sometimes that can give you an idea as well.
Yeah.
I know there's like one therapist on Instagram, and she actually had like specific questions, which I can't remember now what they
Yeah.
are.
I think.
But
Yeah.
but I thought that was really helpful
Yeah.
around, and so it might be, yeah, even like linking to that potentially because that was really
Okay.
good.
Yeah. If you remember, I had
Yeah,
one. I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about.
yeah.
But this
But
one
she's,
from.
yeah, she's like a therapist in
Yeah.
Vancouver.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and
Okay.
so yeah, she maybe looking at that too as well. I can't remember her specific questions,
Mhm.
but yeah, you want to know that you're safe. Right? Like it should
Yeah.
be fine, but
Yeah.
not always fine,
Yeah,
right? And it can be
yeah,
re-traumatizing
yeah. Because I have had some.
for people to go into
Yeah,
it.
I have had some people,
Okay.
say, "Oh, I went in and the therapist told them,
Mhm.
oh no, that doesn't exist," kind of thing, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's not, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a fun way to
Yeah,
access that. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
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 Because I think for me, I trusted you, and then I just I said
Yeah.
we were talking, and I was like, okay, if you are suggesting that person, and I know that you're doing your own work, and
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I can trust her recommendation.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
of course, when I get to the therapist that I'm working with now, I was able to ask
Mhm.
her questions, and I can tell that,
Mhm.
she's really switched on in that way. So, the
Mhm.
fact that I like that you said, ask around, because yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just really hard to go just see somebody out of the blue, right? So asking around is
Yeah.
definitely a way to go.
Definitely. I think that's huge. Like definitely asking around, asking for recommendations
Yeah.
from other people is really helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I've asked everything, but one of the last things I'd like us to go over is, sometimes there's people that's scared of things, or we are scared of things because there's just so much mystery surrounding the things. Like we don't know what it
Mhm.
is, or how it's gonna look
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
Do it just quickly? Are you able to? Not, we're not gonna
Yeah.
simulate anything. Just
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of like give people, and some people that might be listening, an idea of what they can expect,
Mhm.
if they decide to finally just go for it, right?
Yeah. 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 So I think, I mean, some of it would vary depending on, I guess, like what therapist you go to. But
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I think probably you're going to feel nervous going in your first session. Like,
Yeah.
almost everyone who comes to me for the first time, or when I've gone to therapy initially, um, yeah, you feel nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe also excited, but you can
Yeah.
also like there. So that's really normal.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're coming to therapy too, um, part of it is really like the relationship is so important. And so that's where that connection is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that you're not alone in what you're going through. Like your therapist is there to be with you in it,
Mm-hmm.
and to help you sort through some of this stuff. Um, just doing that together. And really, it is like a mix of, you know, them, kind of like both of you like leading at different points. And like sometimes they're going to get things wrong. They're not, your therapist is not perfect.
They better be.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm begging you.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Don't get me wrong.
okay. Yeah, it's okay to let them know when something is like
Yeah.
not working for you.
Yeah.
Um, that maybe there needs to be like some readjustment. It's also okay for you to like go a few times and be like, this is this person, we're just not clicking. You can change
Mm-hmm.
therapists. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Um, and but yeah, really it is, you're working together with someone who, you bring your expertise of like your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and they have some training around some ways to work through things with you. Um, so really it's like this collaborative relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it is a relationship that you're
Mm-hmm.
building and you're working together, and you're not alone in your stuff
Yeah.
anymore.
That's a very good way to put it. You're not alone. Like it's
Yeah.
that feeling of not feeling like you're just carrying everything by yourself, right? It's
Mhm.
such an important thing to
Mhm.
not just know, but also really know, like to have everything
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I know that therapy, some people really don't like therapy,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But for me, I found that it's really made a huge difference, like, and even in ways that
Mhm.
I wasn't expecting.
Mhm.
And then I was gonna say, I love that. And then we also know that there are some people that might have, um, I mean, it is a privilege to be able to access
Yes.
therapy, to be
Yeah.
able to advocate for yourself, to be able to articulate what it is that you're going through, especially once you
Mhm.
get into therapy, to be able to feel
Mhm.
empowered enough to say, this is not working for me. I think let's just,
Yeah.
let's just, oh, you can just ghost the therapist. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Whatever works. Whatever you need.
but what I want to say is it is
Mhm.
it is, I know in some societies it's definitely taboo to to
Mhm.
see a therapist. Like people will think, okay, totally, you've gone off the rails, which
Mhm.
is, for me, was true. I had gone off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind of advice or pointers could you give somebody that's like, okay, I really want to do this, but I don't have maybe the funds, or I
Mhm.
can't speak for myself, or anything,
Yeah.
totally, because I'm trying to imagine somebody that speaks like, our parents, they don't speak English, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how how in the world would they be able to, you know go see a therapist and actually get the help they need, and get it good help, quality help? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 So, I mean, yeah, in terms of accessibility, there's like a few different options. And I'm only speaking to within British
Yeah.
Columbia.
Yeah, totally.
Um, so I usually like maybe I'll just like let you like know about a couple different
Yeah,
options.
sure.
Just
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and then
um
I'll find the links, and then I'll add them
yeah,
in the write
yeah.
up.
So just because sometimes people don't know about these things, and so
Mhm.
it's good to know. One is like Fraser Health. So like there is counseling potentially accessible through Fraser Health. It is not always easy to access.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
worked for Fraser Health, and
Okay.
it depends where you go.
Mhm.
So there's often more access to like group
Okay.
therapy there, but you would potentially be eligible for individual therapy. Like there'd be
Okay.
like an assessment around that. So
Okay.
that is like maybe an option, Fraser Health. Um, the other one is like first, if you are First Nations Health Authority has there's a lot more access to like funding for free
Mhm.
therapy,
Mhm.
which people are not always aware of. So it's
Okay.
good
I didn't
to
know that. Yeah.
know about that too.
Mhm.
Um, and there's different counselors that are like registered with First Nations Health Authority that you
Yeah.
could just see that are regularly work like in private practice, but are kind of
Mhm.
they've gone through like some specific training around that.
Yeah.
Um, the other is what's called like the Crime Victim Assistance Program. So
What is that?
that's
Sorry.
so it's called the Crime Victim Assistance
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
So if you've been the victim of a crime, so that um, yeah, it could be like kind of any crime in
Mhm.
adulthood that was like reported to the police, but also um, if you have experienced like even like child sexual abuse like years ago
Mhm.
and it does not have to have been reported to the police, you can do an application for funding. So a lot of
Mhm.
people don't realize that,
Okay.
don't know about that. But I see a lot of people through the Crime Victim Assistance Program.
Mhm.
Um, so that's like another good source of funding.
Mhm.
That is a possibility.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's different like community programs. Um, I don't know if I know like I think through Archway there are like some
Yeah.
counseling programs too, but it's kind of like specific to like what you're experiencing.
Mhm.
If you have like some funds, but not like a lot, sometimes there's different
Yeah.
agencies
Subsidiary.
who
Okay.
have like interns, like who are
Okay.
in their master's training. Like right now,
Mhm.
the counseling practice I work for, there's an intern. So they're like right at the end of their schooling, like they're being supervised by
Yeah.
someone. So usually it's still like good therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Obviously
is,
not
right?
quite as experienced,
Yeah.
but much more affordable.
Yeah.
So those are like a few different options.
Mhm.
And some therapists will have like a sliding scale as well
Yeah.
too. So that can also help. But
Cool.
yeah, so those
Mhm.
are like a few that I can kind of think of off the top of my head. But
Mhm.
I do wish it was more accessible than it is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Especially now. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else I've left out. I think I've asked you everything that I wanted to ask and just kind of go over. I think maybe the last thing, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted
Mhm.
to say that I probably didn't ask you.
Um, I don't know if if
Okay.
there's like too much else, but um yeah, I think obviously I think like therapy is good and helpful. And I know that like sometimes you don't find the right fit right away. I know I also have had people who are like they just weren't in the right headspace
Hmm.
initially, maybe. I see
Hmm.
that a lot with people like, "Oh, I went when I was like a kid or youth. My parents
Yeah.
made me go, so then it
Yeah.
wasn't that helpful."
Hmm.
But then they're like ready to come in now, so that can also
Yeah.
be a little bit different because I know
Yeah.
sometimes people have had hard experiences,
Hmm.
sometimes also like harmful experiences,
Yeah.
which yeah makes it like that much trickier.
For sure.
But yeah, but therapy can be really helpful and healing, and you don't have to wait until you're at like your lowest point.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much
Mhm.
for that, Katie.
Yeah.
I know this will be helpful. I will put it up, and I'm excited to, yeah, just to see more and more people get the help that they need.
Mhm.
And yeah, just to hear healthy conversation around therapy and getting help, all the good things, because at the end of the day, just like, yeah, we want to be whole people, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I know this is going to be amazing. So what I will do is I'll link all the resources that you've talked about, and then I have some other ones because I know that I have some people that will be watching from Botswana. If you're
Mhm.
watching from any other country, I don't know, because just you'll just have to do your own research. But I will link all the resources that I have specific to me and anybody else or any other ones that I might have. So yeah, so that's it for now. Thank you so much. I have a feeling we're going to have to do part two, but it's just a feeling.
Yeah.